and gentlemen, the show.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? That was absolutely not my video countdown. I realized minutes ago that I was in the wrong channel. But if you're here, I'm here, and this is episode 7 of Wrestling with ADHD, and you're with Bruce, and I'm your host, Bruce. If it seems like I'm nervous, it's because I am. I've known this guy for a long time. I've known of him for a little bit longer than that. Massively respected. I respect him. Actually, I love this guy to death. Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't already know, Mr. Terrence Ward.
Who? Who's this guy? Who's this pasty guy with a microphone and Liberty shirt on? What is this? Oh, wait, that's me.
Oh, sorry about that. Nerves, dry mouth. Sorry. This happens every time.
Raspberry Mountain Dew. I feel you.
Every time I do this, I get nervous. I just want to make sure that I'm presenting my guests in the appropriate way. Make sure that I'm going through this the right way, and to make sure that I'm not steering anybody wrong. You know what I mean? Got to change my privacy settings on this, or none of the comments will show up from my Facebook. I don't know how that works, but ladies and gentlemen, Wrestling with ADHD and Bruce and Mr. Terrence Ward. Terrence, nice. I'm glad you accepted the invitation. I saw on a completely different show that you were interested in coming on, and from that point until right now, and probably 20 to 30 minutes after this episode ends, the live stream, I will be nervous, and I will be second guessing myself, and I'll be really giddy as a schoolgirl. I'm just putting that out there. Like I said, I've known you for a long time. I've been wrestling for 14 years, and I've known of you for a little bit longer than that. So we've crossed paths a time or two, working on the same show in Memphis, Championship Wrestling. We've worked a couple of shows together, but that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is to hear your story and how you wrestle with ADHD. So the way these things usually go, I've got a list of questions I'll ask, but I'm going to give you the floor and give you an opportunity to just kind of go into your story, when you were diagnosed, how you grew up with it, and episode 5, I had a buddy of mine on that he was diagnosed in adulthood, like well into adulthood, and once he was diagnosed, it answered a boatload of questions that he had. So I'll shut up and stop umming you to death.
That's all right. Look, I grew up in a Southern missionary Baptist church. I'm used to the long pauses and the ums and the hearing the pins drop, so I get it. That's not a shot at you, I promise. Listen, so it's interesting, like hearing some of the stories that you've presented about individuals who, have sought medical help as to understanding what they felt was wrong with them. Because honestly, I think all of us that have wrestled with it. I'm gonna have to stop saying struggled and say
no. You can say struggle. That's just the gimmick.
Well, I want to put over the gimmick.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I really do.
And it's interesting. Like sometimes you don't realize what you're struggling or wrestling with in life until you're much older, and then you start looking back at some decisions you've made or some things that have happened, and you're like, why did this not happen? And you begin analyzing and overanalyzing and worrying, over worrying yourself until finally you're like, I need to go get some help. But you mentioned a second ago, you've been in the wrestling business 14 years, and this I've been in since 06. I don't know what that is. So it's what, a 16, 17 years, something like that. So right about the same time. I mean, we're literally right there at the same time. And we've had the opportunity to work at some different shows over the years, and really worked a lot recently here with Memphis Wrestling, which has been an absolute blast and fun all the way around for myself. And I know a lot of the folks that work there, it's, you show up, you do your job, you get to have fun, you get to go home. And that's what's great. So back in 2018, I was working for the nation's top retailer and number one employer in the country as a salaried manager. And I'd been with the company almost 8 years, actually 6 years at that point. I left at my 8-year mark, and I was noticing that there was something wasn't going on right. Like, I knew that I had the knowledge, I had the experience, I knew what to do, I knew how to run a business, I knew how to talk to folks, not boss them around, but actually, constructively give feedback and build them into better associates, employees, and get them to that next step to where they could make more money and they could have, enjoy their time at work versus not looking at it as a, here we go again, another day, another dollar type attitude. And I remember my boss pulling me in the office, talking to me about, it just seems like you're not yourself. And I was just kind of taken aback, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, if not myself, I'm the same guy every day. And kind of brought up some points of direction that he'd left behind, and it hadn't been completed. And for those of you who don't understand, when you're in a management role, I wasn't the type to just sit in the office all the time. I was out there walking the floor, talking to the employees, the associates, and visiting with them, and visiting with customers, being seen. So I wasn't just, I'm not going to say I didn't sit down like some folks do when your feet hurt after walking 9 miles a day, because that's what I averaged. So, you're touching a lot of freight, a lot of merchandise, shaking a lot of hands, talking to a lot of associates, customers, etc. And anyways, he tells me that I just noticed a pattern of things, not being followed up on. And I was like, my evaluations are good. This just doesn't make sense. So I started paying closer attention and really kind of leaning into the digital tools that they had made available to us, and also keeping a paper trail for myself, because I had a similar instance happen before, and experience. And that's a story I'll share with you off the air, privately one day, where a previous boss at the same company had done me wrong. But here, this one at least had enough respect to say, hey, let's work on fixing this. Let's make sure this doesn't continue to be a problem. So I finally just visited with my doctor, and I'm like, listen, I'm having issues at work. I know that I recognize that I'm way more forgetful than I should be. I'm 30 years old. I'm forgetting the basic tasks. I feel like my time management skills are not where they're supposed to be. It's not a matter of not knowing or not wanting to. It's just a matter of, I feel like I've got a chain, around my leg, and I can't function. I can't get where I need to go. So this is in 2018, and my primary care physician said, okay, answer a few questions for me. So I answered just some standard questions about, memory and things of, that were work related, just to kind of rule out that there wasn't any other underlying condition. And he said, I'm pretty sure that you may have the adult version of ADHD. And I'm like, well, my mom always told me that that I had ADHD. My mother now, who was my second grade teacher, could tell you that I had ADHD. Kid, but as it's one thing, when you see, kids running around, you're like, kid's got ADHD. Look at him bouncing off the walls. They're kids. They're developing. So, while that may be a correct assumption, it's a different story. Being a 30-year-old man and finding out that, you're still having that problem of functioning normally, as most folks do. So he set me up to visit with a psychologist to sit down and just kind of talk about personal experiences as well as any medical history, family medical history. Tell me about what your day-to-day life is like. Tell me some things that you're struggling with, and had a very good couple of weeks conversation with the psychologist to make sure that there wasn't any underlying issues that were that were happening. So after about I think I was the fourth week of visiting with her, she finally partnered up with me and said, "Hey, here's my official diagnosis. Your primary care physician, I think, hit the nail on the head. I think, what you're dealing with is, some executive dysfunction. You're dealing with, the adult version of ADHD." She said, based on what you've told me, from what your parents have given you about medical history and some close family, at this point, in-laws, she said, I think that was a correct assumption. So I'm going to send you back to your primary care physician for you to talk about what types of medication. Here are what my recommendations are, but I'll let you talk to your doctor about what's best for you. So I get back to the doctor's office. This is a month later, which was not moving quick enough for me because, again, my job here, it's my bread maker. It's what I'm, full-time gig here that I need to make sure to keep the lights on. It's being kind of held at bay. So I get back to my primary care physician and he says, okay, I got the psychologist report or psychiatrist report. Psychiatrist, psychologist, is there a difference?
Well, there's one's practicing and one's more of like doctor, more of the more intricate, I believe it's a psychologist.
Behavioral health.
Yeah.
Where I went. Okay. So, it was weird to me to walk in there because I'm like, I know I'm not dealing with like some other issues here. So it's kind of odd, going in there and sitting down with that doctor. But nonetheless, if you're struggling with ADD or wrestling with ADHD, ADD, it's going to be weird at first when you seek help. But shout out to that doctor. She made it absolutely painless. Very down to earth, no different than you and I having a conversation, Bruce. I mean, very personable, very empathetic, and understanding and listening. Wasn't there to judge, and that made it 10 times more easy for me to be able to actually let the guard down and be like, okay, let's talk and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with the stigma that's attached with attention deficit hyperactive disorder. Like you were saying, you see a kid bouncing off the walls or that's having some issues like that, and you're like, oh, he's got ADHD, or you find a kid or you see a kid that isn't learning at the same pace as everybody, and it's like, oh, well, that kid's definitely got ADHD. So there's as an adult, like I honestly I was diagnosed in the 3rd grade, and so I've lived with it my entire life. So I really do. I feel for you, and I feel for guys that have went their lives, early life, and then into a teenagehood, and then adulthood, and not known that hey, there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain's just wired differently, and your dopamine levels. You have to do more things to stimulate those chemicals flowing. And it's really the stigma. So, psychologists, they're taught to make it more, approachable and less, take the sting away and the stigma of it.
Yeah. And it's it makes it to where, and I guess the easiest way to sum that up is, the world looks at, how do you get 4? Well, most of the world's going to say, well, 2 + 2, because you're taught as a kid 2 + 2 is 4. But for us with ADHD, ADD, we get the same answer, but we go 1 + 3. or
yeah.
Or 1 - 5. We're getting, yeah, 1 - 5. That would not get the negative number. You're right. Your brain is wired differently. It doesn't mean you're going to get a different answer. You're just going to take a different route to get to that answer. And I did start out on non-narcotic, and I was very adamant about not starting out on any kind of narcotic based medication because I was very worried about the addictive nature of some
Oh
of
yeah,
the.
and the side effects. Well, I mean,
Yes.
being an adult, that's one thing that all of us worry about in general. If I get a cold and I go to a doctor, I'm going to make sure that this medication that I take isn't going to impair my driving or my
Yeah.
ability to do my job. So I mean, as an adult, that's the first thing you think of. So how was that?
So it from 2018 until March of 2021, I think it was. Hang on a second. Was it 20? Oh, she's in the other room. I was going to ask her. See, I'm forgetting. I think it was March of 2022. I'm pretty sure that March of 2022 or 23. I can't remember. It was either a year or at the first of this year. Anyways, it may have been, no, it was actually this year. It was March of 2023. Yeah. So from October of 2018 until March of 2023, I was on Wellbutrin, and Wellbutrin's not really, it's bupropion is the generic version, if you're familiar with that. But
I am.
it is not normally, for those who are looking for that medication, prescribed for ADHD. Its primary use is in other applications, but doctors also found it was very useful in some cases for treating ADHD for those looking for a non-narcotic medication. And it worked great for about that time until about late 2022. It was almost 2 years to the date. No, 2019, 2020, 4 years to the date. I've been on, good Lord, I've been on it for 3 or 4 years. I may have my time frames mixed up. 2019, I started Wellbutrin. Yeah, 2019, because I got the job there at 2018. So yeah, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. God bless, that is still 4 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. My years were right, I guess. I was just wrong on
no, yeah, you were right. My background with Wellbutrin was when I was in Iraq. They gave it to us because a side effect of it was you could quit smoking.
Oh.
So I was like, sweet, let me try this. Didn't work for me, unfortunately. But I really wasn't interested in quitting smoking at the time. So
I can kind of understand in that environment where that might help ease the
a
edge
little
off.
bit. Yeah. Take the edge clean off of it. Yeah.
Yeah. That versus any other addictive substances out there, such as, what is it? Rips. Was that another huge energy drink? Like addiction?
Oh yeah. Rippets. Those things, dude. The Army, I don't probably not the Army, but I know that they would bring those in pallets.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that is not an endorsement for that company, by the way.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I had my fill of those in country.
Just hearing it probably makes you close to gag, doesn't it? I'll try not to make you do that. Wellbutrin I was on that, and I noticed in October of last year that it just wasn't working, and I was on 350 milligrams. I think it was 350 or 150 milligrams. Sorry. 150 milligrams of Wellbutrin, which was a pretty substantial dose, and it just wasn't doing anything anymore. And I just
it's
was
almost
not.
Like in the 4 years, your body had produced or created,
and it got accustomed to it.
Yeah.
Tolerance. Yeah.
That's
grown
the word.
Tolerance to the medication. And so I told my primary care, I was like, or I went to go see my primary care physician, and wouldn't you know it, he was out on medical leave. So it's like, okay, well, I don't need to not take anything, because I know that that's not an alternative I need, especially at this point. I had started a new job, which I've been at since, March of 2020. And this job is super important to me. And I love this job. And I don't want to do anything, to jeopardize that if possible, within my control. And so I went to see my PCP, and there was another doctor. I forget her name. Again, terrible with names. And we talked, and she revealed to me, she said, I deal with ADHD. Here's, I deal with executive dysfunction. Here's what I take, and here's how it's helped me. She said, I'm not suggesting that you take the medication that I take. She said, but I am going to tell you that there are some options out there if you want to try a potential medication that is a narcotic, she said, we can start you out at a very, very low dose. And she said, I mean, the absolute lowest we can go. She said, I think it'll be beneficial because of your medical history. You don't take any, you're not on any kind of medications currently, with the exception of, allergy meds, which are nothing when we're talking about, any kind of painkillers or addictive medications. She says you have no medical history of, issues with, your heart or, any other internal organs that this would mess with. How do you feel about that? And I was straight up told her, I've got some reservations about it. I do have some family history of folks that have struggled with different addictions and whatnot. And I'm just afraid that, that may be what I end up dealing with by taking this medication down the road. I'm not saying, she understood, not saying that, I'm going to take one and, oh my gosh,
then you're mining copper to get, to get a prescription.
Terrible. That construction site didn't stand a chance.
Right. Just completely cleaned them out.
So she said, let me get you started on 20 milligrams of Adderall. And I recognized the name. Totally knew. And if you're in pro wrestling, you know what Adderall is.
Yes.
Between Adderall and Somas and Hydros and Oxy, everybody knows what Adderall is. It's one of the top 5, prescription drugs.
Oh yeah, notoriously.
That were notoriously abused, especially back in the 80s and 90s. Don't know if it is as much now with their health and wellness.
I think now it's a lot more controlled. It seems to be anyway.
Yeah, at least on the surface for sure. But I was kind of hesitant about it. She said, try it. She said, your brain at this point, she said, until about 25, your frontal lobe and your brain stop developing after 25. She said, so there shouldn't be any reason, unless your body reacts differently, and we'll, come in once a quarter, once every 3 months, see how you're doing, see how the medicine's working, just a normal checkup. She said, but you could possibly stay on this dose for the rest of your life and never have to go up in dosage. And I was like, really? Because that really was like okay, so that means if I ever had to get off the medication for a health reason or whatnot, I'm not going to have to wean myself off.
Yeah.
I'll be able to quit it and not have to worry about, any
withdrawals or
weaning
anything
side
like
effects.
Yeah. So, man, how did it make you feel speaking with a doctor that had the same, symptoms, similar symptoms and diagnosis as you did?
It made me feel like they've come leaps and bounds since, the study of what ADHD, ADD is, because there's still a lot of folks that are just uneducated, and it's not their fault. It's just, it's not been looked at as a serious condition. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be drawing a disability check over it, but it's, it's one of those things that if you stop long enough, and look, you'll see that not everybody is either missing an arm or has a deformed leg or has a patch on their eye. And there's a werewolf mentioned there. For them to have a disability or for them to have something that could affect their daily life. I'm not saying that, comparing those two is the same, but it's the perception that ADHD is just you just need to, focus more, or you need to, not, be as bouncy, lay off the caffeinated beverage. Crap doesn't work, So
interesting fun fact. I don't so much anymore, but I used to drink an energy drink before I went to sleep because it calmed me down.
Yes.
I still to this day, like when I get to work, I'll have a cup of black coffee just because the caffeine affects our brains differently.
It levels you. And it's weird. Like there's been some studies, and I wish I would have brought the link with me, but there was a study that was done about ADHDers who drink caffeine and caffeinated beverages, and it does not affect them in the same way. Like I know my wife, for example, she could, if she was to drink a Mountain Dew, which is what I'm drinking right now, this late to bedtime, she'd probably be up another 4 or 5.
Right.
She just doesn't drink a lot of caffeine. I mean, she has a coffee occasionally every morning or every other morning, or, a couple times a week. But
she's not she's not mainlining caffeine.
Yeah. I'm drinking like 3 or 4 a day, and it doesn't bother me at all. Like I'm good. And I feel like it helps me to focus on top of the medication that I'm taking. Not that I, need the soda, but It just I feel level. I don't feel like I'm, struggling at that point.
Right. I did a test several years ago. Actually, I say several. It was actually last year, about this time or a little bit before, maybe the summertime, like heavy in the summer, like June, July. But I went to the gas station one morning before work, and I bought 6 of the I call them tall boy energies, the C4s.
Yep.
And I would normally get 1 or 2, and I could drink one for the first part of the day and the other one for the second part of the day until I got off work. But I drank all 6 of them in probably the first 4 hours of work. And normally one of those, you don't get the jitters. 2 of them, you don't get, the nervous, immense energy that comes with caffeine.
Yes.
It took 6 of those to get me to actually feel somebody drinks one and they're like, oh man, I'm so, their hands are shaking and they're getting, they're bouncing off, they're bouncing off the wall. But I drank 6 of them, and it took 6 of them to actually give me the same reaction that of somebody who would normally drink 1 or 2 drinks and be like, I feel it, and it's like, my boss, my manager, he thought I was going to have a heart attack, but I'm like, no, dude, I'm good. I just had to test this out. Needless to say, after that, I didn't do that ever again, just because I didn't like feeling like that at work. I've sort of developed over the years having it and knowing that I've had it since I was a kid. I do little experiments from time to time, and that was one of them that I was just like, I wonder, one of them kind of makes me good, and 2 of them is still all right. I may have one before I go to bed. What's 6 gonna do? So I didn't do that again, but I've developed a American Sign Language. I've developed a normal for ADHDers, and it's really just putting a mask on and not making weird noises or tapping a pencil or
as I'm sitting here doing this with my hands.
Well, yeah, right. Look, luckily you can't see my hands because I've got a worry ring on, and it definitely helps. It's like a little fidget spinner, but I use it a lot when I'm with my wife because I don't want her to be like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, I can go nowhere with you. But what she doesn't understand is I could be having a normal conversation with her and be engaged and enjoying, and then all of a sudden I'm listening to her and I'm engaged and I'm focused, but then I'm no longer getting any joy out of the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Not that I hate it, but it's just man, I'm bored now.
The stimulation's gone.
The stimulation's gone. It was there at the beginning, and then as the conversation wanes, it's like, huh. And then I start tapping, and then she's like, "Oh, I'm boring you." No, you're not boring me. I'm just my brain is bored. I'm still here and I'm still listening, and I want to know. I enjoy talking to you, but. And then it turns into a little squabble of, you don't listen to me and you don't care. And it's like, that's not true, babe.
Yeah. It's like my mom told our my kindergarten teacher was Miss Lyda Tinker. And you probably remember that name, but she told my kindergarten teacher, see Scotty's comment.
Sorry about that. That's right. Marines lived off caffeine and tobacco.
That was all you needed.
Yep.
The MRE did not come with food; it just came with tobacco. Yeah.
Well, when I got in, it was 2001, and we had heard stories of MREs coming with packs of cigarettes in them, and I was so upset. I would open our MREs and there'd be no cigarettes in them. So
I think they stopped that in Korea, Vietnam.
Oh yeah, it was a long time ago. I'm so sorry. it's par for the course for a podcast like this. Miss Tinker, yes.
Yeah, so my mom told her, look, you're going to have to grab a hold of both of his cheeks and get him to look you in the eyes so he can focus on what you have to tell him. And good Lord, I just saw the other comment. I'm gonna
yeah, I'm gonna leave that one.
That's good though.
Sorry, Scotty, that was great, but
oh goodness, I've never had one, but I can empathize. But you know, it's one of those that I think about what my mom had told Miss Tinker to do with me to get me to focus, and I think, man, that actually, you know, now if you get my attention and you were like, it's a serious conversation, then I'm 100% focused. And you know, one of the bad things about that is you know, the mood swings involved with ADD is terrible too. You know, it's especially if you are lacking of any sleep or if you're overwhelmed. You know, and it's hard to manage that, and especially whenever, you know, there's been some times at work where I've went at it with a coworker. It's like, yeah, I'm stressing over this right now, and you're coming to me with some piddly stuff. I ain't got time for you.
And I've been there.
That starts a whole full blown, you know, argument mood swing, and it's like at the end of it, you're like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to blow up. It's not you. I got 50 million things going on, and then you came at me at just the wrong possible.
I felt attacked.
Yeah, and that wasn't. And then you think back and you look back, and that's not what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And then you feel terrible afterwards. But you know, I had some really good colleagues who understood, and you know, usually, you know, I was the type of person, still am, that if I was at work or if I'm in a show and you see me and I'm, you know, I'm having a good day, you see me kind of smiling and you know, kind of upbeat, good. But if you didn't see that, then you knew something was wrong. Most of them knew. You know, there was a couple that, you know, had one leave me a note that knew that, you know, struggling with ADD, getting accustomed to the medication, like left me a really great note, and I cherish it to this day. It was a wonderful Bible verse and really kind of helped calm me down, and was like, okay, all right, yeah. My visual representation is affecting everybody, not just me. So that really helped kind of give my attention without holding my face.
Right. The way I was at school was when I learned the thing, I was done with the thing.
Yes.
I didn't want a teacher to sit at the front of the class and harp on the same thing. Like, please give me the test so I can go on to the new thing.
Yes.
I didn't recognize this so much growing up, but in my adult life, in the Marines and then, you know, civilian life, I catch myself with, I wouldn't necessarily call it a depression. There's some times where I get an idea to do something, or I find a hobby that I want to do. I do that hobby and I do it well, or what I think is well. Then I'll do the hobby, or I'll do the thing for 5 days in a row. On that 6th day, oh my God, I'm so bored with this. I need a new thing.
I want to jump in there really quick. I was checking my TV to make sure that it was still on. So our TV's on over there, but before our your podcast here, I was playing Fallout 4, and that's been
right on,
because it literally is the same. I will play this until I'm sick of it, and I won't touch it. I haven't played Fallout in over like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Like,
yeah,
it's so aggravating, because then it's like, oh, I forgot I could do that on here, and then I'm rediscovering it again. Or the video editing, prime example. So I edit the Memphis Wrestling TV show, and this
amazing job.
This relates to what you're talking about. Before that, and I'd still one day like to sit down and get your story on video. I did Arkansas Valor, which was a docu-series.
Yeah, we talked several years ago.
Yeah, about interviewing Arkansas veterans on their service, and I won 4 film awards, and I've actually got my one of my. Actually, now let me pull it down here. It's right above my desk. So I've actually won a statuette from a film festival in LA.
That's awesome.
For one of my films. And It was three individuals, 4 awards. One, my Arkansas Valor, my most recent one with Bill Binkley. He was a Vietnam veteran. Won 2 awards. One in, I think it was North Carolina or South Carolina at Freedom Fest International, and then the Global Film Festival Awards out in LA. So that was really cool to get those awards. But after that, it was like, okay, I want to do this more, but then I've lost all, and I don't want to say incentive, I've lost all energy to do it.
Yes.
Like, because I felt like I was doing the same thing over and over and over again instead of, okay, what's the new thing? Okay, I've got the award. What's the new thing? What new thing can I do now? And when Dustin approached me about editing the TV show, that was the new thing.
Yes.
And it's fun. He'll laugh if he sees this or when he sees this, but I absolutely hate editing recaps into the show. I hate it. I hate it with a passion because I've already edited it. I've already seen it. And now I'm having to go find it and put it back in the show, which again, my brain knows we have to have this to tell the story. People who've not been watching need to know what happened the week prior or previously on the show to understand where the story's taking them. But the ADD in here is like, already touched this once. I don't want to pick it up again.
Right.
I've set it down. It's no longer shiny. Leave it alone. So that it has been a struggle. I mean, and it is a struggle every week. I love doing it. Don't get me wrong, Dustin. I love doing it. But man,
Dustin, I love that he does it. He makes us look just amazing. He makes the whole show look great.
Thank you.
You're
Still.
I tell the story. I've got a painting that actually is 6 paintings in one, and it's hanging on my wall. And I started out and I was painting. I had a design in my head. It just popped in my head one morning. I woke up and I was like, I've got to paint that. So it took me about 6 days, 6 days total to paint it. Like a couple hours here, 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, about 6 days. And I was almost done with the painting. And on the 6th day, I put the painting away. I went to go to paint, and got all my paints ready, went through my whole process of getting ready to paint, music on, stuff in the background to distract me or to not distract me. And I was completely sick of it. I was like, this isn't even the thing that I wanted to paint, but it was, but in my head, I was disgusted with it. You know what I'm saying? I was just like, I can't believe that I wasted. Sorry. My dogs are going crazy.
It's all good.
Somebody probably drove by. I was just completely devastated because I in my head, what I told myself is I had wasted 6 painting this monstrosity. So I put it away. I didn't look at it again for a couple of days. And like one of my kids was like looking at my stuff and they were like, "Oh, Dad, this is a super cool painting." And I'm like, "Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not." And "Oh, but it is," So I was like, "Okay, maybe it is." So I was painting, and then I was going to finish that idea, and then I painted completely over it. Just whitewashed it and started again fresh. And I did that 5 times before I just nailed down the thing that I wanted to do. And I was going to throw the whole thing away. My wife was like, "Hey, don't throw that away. It looks good." And now it hangs on my wall to remind me that, sometimes you're going to hate the thing that you love. Put it down for a little bit and then pick it back up.
Yeah. And that's like one of the things that dealing with this that has been a pain point for me is the short-term memory. And, as a ring announcer, that makes it really tough You've probably noticed, I don't know, you may have noticed just with your attention to detail and the things that you're just watching for, regardless if you're meaning to watch for it or not, is I've started bringing cue cards to the ring to do ring introductions. It's to match the gray hair of age at 34. But in all seriousness, I struggle so hard to remember weights, hometowns, monikers, wrestling names. If I know your real name and not your wrestling name, your ring name, there's been some slip ups before. I'll give you a prime example. It worked out in our favor. I did an introduction at, it was for Kevin Lawler's show out in, where did we have that? It was in Cordova at the Woodland Hills Event Center. And I think it was a Halloween show. And it was Johnny Dotson, Action Jackson versus Derek King and Dustin Starr, and Maria was his manager, his valet at the time, and of course Dustin was playing the heel, and so was Derek at the moment. And I was doing the introductions, no cue cards, nothing. I've known these guys. I hadn't known Johnny Dotson that long of a point, but I've known Action for almost a decade and a half. Same with Dustin, same with Derek. Known these guys for a long time. So I introduced Derek. Then I go to Dustin. Dustin's got this long introduction, 2-time Tennessee, USP Labs athlete at the time. He's a, Southern heavyweight classic champion 2 times, from Memphis, Tennessee, accompanied by his lovely Maria, who, by the way, I don't know why I used to roll Maria instead of but I said Derek.
It was Flair.
I introduced him as Derek King and not Dustin Starr.
Oh man,
Derek put it over the way that Derek would have put it over. Like he's bouncing around, he hops up to the other turnbuckle. He's like, yeah, this whole time I laugh at first, and I was like, ooh, not good. So at that point, it's like I've got to figure something out because, of course, they sold it great. Dustin, I know, had a great laugh, and so did Maria. But out there in that ring, they could have killed me with their looks and, for the crowd purposes. But it was great because it worked out enough to where I didn't get to go to Slap City, and Maria just took over doing introductions for Dustin when they came. Never again did I get to introduce Dustin until we started at Memphis Wrestling. But I tell that story because the promoter, Kevin, had asked me one day, and this is not a shot across about Kevin, but he's like, dude, why do you have to write everything down? Because he would tell me about certain spots in the show to remember when to introduce this person or when to make mention of a specific thing going on. Maybe it was, details at intermission. It's like, dude, I will forget it if I don't write it down. So if you don't give me a second to write this down, it's not going to get mentioned. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So fast forward, and I've got a clip. If you don't mind, I'd like to share it.
That's fine.
I think this is the one. I'm going to listen to it on my end really quick. I'm pretty sure. Oh, there it is right there. So this is thank God when I had my audition with the PFL, which was just a godsend blessing. They gave me my cue cards. I had to put them together myself, but they gave me the cue cards. And I was like, I'm not used to this because in pro wrestling, you're really not supposed to have cue cards. You're supposed to know this, the performer's, information, to the letter, to the T. But here they want to make sure it's done properly. And my ADD kicked in the middle of reading this introduction. But I got really great feedback. Told me it was like, look, you slipped, but you kept going. And that's what mattered. You didn't freeze. You didn't stop. You just kept going. And that was that decade plus experience of being in the local yokel wrestling shows and learning. Just keep going. Don't stop.
Yeah. Fans will recognize a flub, but if you just keep going, it's like, hey, it's part of the show.
Shoot, yeah. Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me here. I'm going to send you the link if you don't mind, and I will let you share it because it's telling me I'm going to have to restart my. It's going to tell me I'm going to have to restart my browser because I don't have my permissions turned on because I don't want the government watching me.
Now, are you going to send that? You going to send that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just drop that in the private chat for you, and it's linked to be at the time for that introduction. So, give you a little background here. I'm at this audition where at the PFL, which is the UFC is one of their main competitors, and we're in Orlando, live audience, live broadcast on Fubo TV as well as ESPN Plus, and I'm just kind of like, doing this intro, and I've got my cue card reading line by line, and my brain starts thinking about something else in the middle of this introduction. I was thinking about what I was going to say instead of reading the card like I trained myself to do. There's that slip up, and thankfully it turned out not to be that big of a deal and was not a deal breaker. Justin Roberts, by the way, ended up getting that job with the PFL. So at least I got beat out by somebody who makes a living. Who makes a living doing this, that's very well known. So
awesome. Okay. Yeah, I've got it. I just got to see if I can. I don't know how to.
You should go down to present, and then you'll go to share screen, and then you should be able to share that tab. It'll ask you to share a specific tab.
All right. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, Chrome is interesting. Trusted browser.
Yeah.
Better than Netscape ever was.
Okay, so. Okay, so.
And if I need to share, I can. I think I figured out how to bypass all that stuff.
I think I figured it out here.
Oh.
There we go.
Perfect. This is live, folks. We'll do it live.
We'll do it live.
Oh, you're going to love the ads. Gotta love it. It never fails.
There we go.
Let me tell you something. I hate ads. I hate it. They're so distracting.
Yeah, when I let's see here.
Oh no. I hope that didn't go back to 56 seconds. The times
it is our second chance week.
5750 is the
Challenger
time
Series season.
5750, all right.
If you don't know how the
I got you, bro. I still got it pulled up on my end.
I am.
This time, she wants a contract.
So a little behind the scenes here. I've got
it's definitely the quad chance for me.
So I've got the producer talking
here,
to me.
Obviously, I feel
while
like
this
I
is going
have
on,
already gotten a contract.
And then I'm hearing
After
myself
three,
the actual
this will be
feed
my
on
third
top
one.
of that.
So
imagine this:
yes,
you got ADHD,
and honestly,
ADHD.
It took me
You're
a while
trying to read off of a
make the
card,
decision on
trying to
whether
think
I
about
was
how you're going to
come back or
enunciate
not.
the introduction,
So,
and then you're going to have to listen to the
salty
producer for your
kind of at a loss
cues
for
in your
words that
ear,
I'm
while you're
even still
listening
in
to
a situation
yourself
and
to
not in
gauge
the
your
tournament,
volume
but
on how much you're
I'm here.
projecting your voice. So, I think this is it.
For our Puncher's Chance fighter introductions, we go inside the cage to Terrence Ward.
Fight fans, these last two fights have been incredible, and this one is not going to be any different in the Smart Cage. This bout is for the women's featherweight division.
I was about 25 pounds heavier
Introducing
in the
to you
shot,
first,
too.
fighting out of the blue corner. She specializes
you
in
look great.
striking and weighed in officially at 144 3/4 pounds. In 3 professional bouts, she has a record of 3 victories and 0 defeats, with 1 win by way of submission. Fighting
There it
out
is.
of Coconut Creek, Florida, here is Evelyn Espartana Martins.
That was, you can pause it there, but that was one of 3 slip ups I had that night, but it was so quick and covered so easily. At this point, I'd been on the ADHD medication, which I contribute to helping, because I can't imagine had I not been on any sort of medication, how that would have went. It probably would have been a lot worse. I'm not saying I doubt my abilities or, to be able to get on a live broadcast, but to deal with 12 hours of from makeup chair to hotel room of production, rehearsals, prep, show, weigh-ins, show, remembering your cue spots and listening to the producers, all this stuff going on without that ADHD medication. I don't know if I'd have been able to perform as well as I did. But that slip up was just a great example of, if you've got ADHD, if you've got ADD, you make a mistake, just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just keep going. Because none of the fans noticed. Not a single fan of that audience noticed.
Well, if you hadn't pointed it out, I probably wouldn't have noticed. You see it all the time. We're all humans. Humans make mistakes from time to time. Heck, I could be talking to you right now and mispronounce something or say something off and just right back to the original sentence that I was saying, and you don't think nothing of it. It's just like, oh, look, little mistake. We don't point those things out is what I'm getting at. It's as long as you just keep going, like you said, and it's just, it is what it is. But that was really super cool, man.
Yeah, it was interesting how that came about with social media, and I think for me, in the job I have now is social media related. So we teach and train folks on how to use social media, and myself and a team of 4 now, well, 3 of us, including our director, and then one previous colleague who's now in a different department within our organization, still working right alongside with us, just doing a different role. We've trained tens of thousands of folks collectively on social media best practices and how to leverage that. And for me, it's been, I think, a huge blessing, because social media is ever changing. It's not the same thing every day. So it's that shiny object every time you open your phone. And that's why, again, is why it's so addictive.
Yeah,
but
yes.
It's so easy for us to navigate and to be able to participate in, because it's something different every time we open our phone or every time we scroll and refresh our newsfeed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Man, it's been great. We're about 52 minutes in. Time flies when you're having fun. I've had a blast. I feel like I know you that much better now, and now that I know that you're one of us, even more. So I've noticed a lot of times that I've done this. I know I'm only on episode 7, but the more people I talk to, the more I realize that we have a lot more in common than what we thought. So and that's just in general, but I'm saying ADHDers, so to speak, we're a lot more the same than we're different. So I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
I normally do the 5 count, but well, I don't call it the 5 count, but wrestling with ADHD, it's the gimmick. We're putting the gimmick over. But I've got a couple of questions that I normally ask about this time, and it generally takes us to the end of the show. How were you in the business before or after your diagnosis? How you were probably before you were in the business before. Okay, so looking back, could you recognize? Like I was telling you about one of my guests recently that was diagnosed later. Could you recognize, like, oh my gosh, that's why I did that thing back then?
Oh, 100%. 100%. The super fixations, man. Even now, it's still a problem. It's not near as bad, but the the hyperfixation on one thing, one way of doing something, because it's your comfort zone. It's your, that's your foundation. No matter if it's built upon sand or stone, you're committed to it, because that's what you've grown accustomed to. So yeah, I can look back and think I would have done so many things differently then, knowing what I know now.
Yeah. Well, I also, having it this whole time, and I've just recently started, telling people that I have ADHD, especially in the wrestling business, because there's guys that I've known since the beginning that didn't know I had ADHD, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, dude, that's why you're the way that you are."
What's that supposed to mean?
Yeah. Like what? Well, and that's that. I had to tell them like, well, I just didn't want anybody to look at me strange or to, I learn differently. I just wanted to be a normal guy. I didn't want to be, hey, that guy's normal. Hey, that guy's normal. Oh, look, there's Bruce with ADHD. Hey, that guy's normal. You know what I'm saying? So I get that, like being diagnosed after you've been in the business and you're looking back and saying, oh man, that's why that happened, or this is what I would have done differently if I would have known that I had ADHD, and it could have completely altered the trajectory of your career, in a good way or in a bad way. But that goes with anything. But I have friends that are in the business now that are like, oh my God, dude, oh my gosh, if I would have known that you had ADHD back then, maybe I wouldn't have been so hard on you because you forgot, 90% of the spots because you were focused on everybody else's but your own. And I'm like, well, I didn't tell you so because I didn't want you to treat me any differently, it's just one of those things where, like, if you don't think to ask, no normal person is going to be like, hey man, you learn differently. You got ADHD?
No,
no, I don't, by the way. But it's not something that, like you said earlier, it's not something that presents physically. So it's not something that people really think about. So, and if they don't think about it, I'm not going to bring it up.
Yeah. And I couldn't do what y'all do in terms of wrestling, because I just, the executive dysfunction, the level of it that I have, I could not remember what I needed to remember to tell that story justice. So, behind the desk, perfectly fine with, because I can get my format sheet and I can call it. I can help tell that story from the desk. But you get me in the ring, you try to help me remember the story you're trying to tell. I'm done. I got really quick. I never will forget. God rest his soul. I got cussed out by Brian Lawler.
Oh, I've been on the receiving end of that from time to time.
Very well deserved.
Yes.
Regardless of your anybody's first reaction at that, it was very well deserved. I screwed up a spot I was supposed to, that was very important in that match in telling that story. And you have a former WWE performer that was in WrestleMania more than once, former champion in that company, and you made him look bad. And I was green. I was a manager at the time, missed a spot, and that ADD was to blame because I just didn't told me before we went out, and boom, walked through the curtain, and I'm like, I forgot.
I can completely relate. Working on TV and wrestling on TV, I have to, without giving away any inside baseball, yeah. I have to focus on my part, and just believe that my opponent's part, or the person I'm in the ring with's part is going to be handled on their end. Early in my career, I used to focus on everybody's part so that I would remember mine, so that I could remember theirs, and in doing so, I would forget mine.
Yeah,
and it wasn't until about 3 years ago when I had this idea to do this podcast that I realized, hey, actually, it was a WWE Hall of Famer that kind of pulled me to the side and was like, hey man, the only person in the match that you're responsible for is yourself. And, it was like a door was opened, a light switch was flipped, the cobwebs were cleaned.
Where were you 10 years ago?
Yes. Literally, like, I was like, holy crap, I never in a million years thought of it that way. I thought I was being a good vet by remembering everybody else's parts, including my own, but it turns out I was just shooting myself in the foot.
Yeah, and it's great if you can, but if you can't, like,
just
remember your part.
Just remember your part, because that's the part that you're going to be responsible for.
Yeah.
One last question.
Sure.
What is something that you would say to kid you?
Ooh.
Just one thing. It can be anything.
Wow, that's a Mr. trying to get his doctorate here with a philosophical question.
Well, okay. If you want to put it more in a box,
don't you put me in a box? No.
What I mean by that is kids, you didn't know you had ADHD. It's something that you were born with. Your brain was developed this way. What is something that like a cheat code that you could tell your younger self that would be meaningful?
Don't wait so long to ask for help. If I would have known at a much earlier age that what I was going through, with the executive dysfunction, the cognitive issues of, struggling to pay attention, I would have definitely, I would not have wanted to be on any kind of medication in school. Brain still developing at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have told my younger self, talk to your teachers, let them know what you're struggling with, and ask how they can help and show that you're willing to learn. Because it wasn't that I wasn't willing to learn in school, or that I didn't want to make good grades. I just felt that I physically couldn't, because it was, you put me in a box for 8 hours a day with a monotoned individual teaching from a textbook, and it was like nails on a chalkboard. It was torture.
Hey, look, there's a bird out the window. That thing.
Oh my gosh!
That thing is more exciting than what's going on in this classroom.
Or talking to another student, throughout the whole class, or I will say, again, and it seems like everybody has passed away, that I can remember, that's really helped me out. Miss Joyce Duncan.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
She was not just my English teacher, but her son and I, Taylor, were best friends growing up for the longest time, up until kind of grew apart up in high school. Still friends, but just weren't as close as we were growing up. We'd stay at each other's houses all the time, go to his birthday parties at his mom's, and he'd come over to my house, and when I was young, for birthday parties and whatnot. But I remember sitting in her class for English, and she recognized that I had an attention issue, or an attention disorder of some sort. And it wasn't through my lack of trying. She approached her teaching in a way that wasn't 100% solely focused on those with attention deficit disorder, but included them. And that made it her class, and Mr. Hackworth, God, love him too. There's another one.
Him and Sergeant Slaughter and a few other guys is why I became a Marine.
Yes. Those two individuals were probably the most impactful teachers that made it interesting enough to where I could go in their class any day, every day, and I felt like I learned something and I achieved something. And as a matter of fact, in I think both of their classes, I had B's and A's. I had great grades. I mean, I did very well in those classes, especially on tests. Now, I think Mr. Hackworth, I may have slacked on a little bit when I had to go through a second time for another history class. But first go around, I was good. That civics was great. Going back for U.S. history, not so great because we'd already been
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the way they approached our teaching styles, especially Miss Duncan, she was just, she was amazing.
She was an angel, I believe.
Yes, 100%.
She could just see, and like you said, I had her in several classes, and for those that don't know, me and Terrence are from the same area, graduated the same school.
I think so.
Yeah. I graduated in 2001.
6 years later, I walked through that same door.
I'm really old. But yeah, just an amazing soul and an amazing teacher. She could really pull out the good in a student. Not that there was a lot of bad in any students, but she could really
Pull out your best you.
Yes, absolutely. And those kind of teachers are really what every student needs. If you want your student to do well, if you want to do well in school, seek out those teachers that really care, because those are the ones that make a difference. And I'm 40 years old. I've been through 2 tours of combat, and I've lived a long, I guess I could say I've done a long laundry list of things in the short amount of time I've been here. And I don't know if I'd be half those things if it wasn't for teachers like Miss Duncan and Mr. Hackworth.
Yeah. And
several more that I haven't mentioned, and I don't want anybody to think that those were the only 2 that impacted me. But
yeah, that's I definitely, my wish, I know we're pressed for time here, and you're trying
no. I've pushed these things as far and as wide as I want to, so we can communicate for a little bit longer if you want.
I definitely would encourage, mentioning the younger self, encourage me to reach out to those teachers more than what I did, because again, didn't know that there was anything. I knew there was something. No, I didn't know there was really anything wrong with me. But I would have that conversation of like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's who you need to talk to that can help you progress better through life. I don't think it would have changed the outcome of where I'm at today in terms of like, job and level of education, but it would have made things so much smoother and easier in terms of undue stress, not having to go through certain stressful moments. And I mean, really stressful moments in life, to be able to better focus on the mental health versus the educational health that I'm so desperately needing to focus on as well. But I really hope that as we move forward, we don't just look at a medication-based resolution, especially for those in school with the developing brains, up until their 20s, but find a way to get the resources available to these teachers to be able to recognize, no different than they would recognize any other behavioral
absolutely
condition that a student may have, or physical limitation, mental limitation, that they could recognize and say, okay, this student is, dealing with ADHD. So I need to, make sure that as I'm teaching, I'm incorporating these different, whether it's, I don't want to say activities, but key points that are going to draw their attention.
Yes. I was just thinking, like, a thought popped into my head. Not necessarily, a different, just like a lesson plan that was more engaging.
Yes.
There's some instances where a thing I loved about college is some professors had little videos that they would play in between that was geared toward the lesson that they were teaching. When I was in the Marine Corps, after I got back from combat, I taught people how to be radio operators. And one thing that I would do is at the top of a class, I would have an attention getter, which was just almost like an icebreaker. It would be like a funny video, or it would be an informative, military-esque video that really got their focus and kind of broke the ice for me to stand up there and and teach about a piece of military equipment that could save your life. So
it was the military finger snap.
Right. It really was.
Yeah.
But yeah, and sometimes that's all we need. I am a fully functioning, non-medicated adult ADHDer. I stopped taking medication in the 9th grade, and there's only been a few times since then that I was like, maybe I should get some medication for this. But I've been able to trip my way through it.
All forward.
I feel like I'm a decently functioning adult human being that doesn't let my ADHD control me. I wrestle with it daily. So yeah, that is an amazing message. And Terrence, man, I loved this. I told you off air that I was really super nervous when you first said that you wanted to come on. I know the things that you've done, and I know the things that you do now. So for you to come and be on my little kindergarten show, I really appreciate you.
This will put butts in seats.
I hope so. I'm hoping for the T Ward clout to start rolling in.
All 4 of my followers.
Well, I've been looking. I don't know if you could see it on yours, but when we started, I had 5 people, and it starts to wane. But like I tell everybody, I get a lot of after the stream ends feedback. A large group of people that watch message me after the show went off the air, and they're like, "Hey man, I'm glad you put another show on. Keep on going. I loved the episode. Super informative." And my whole thing to them is, you can log on and there's a live chat where you can throw comments in and we'll answer them, right there. And they're like, well, maybe I'll do that eventually. But I feel like this thing still has to continue going. So I appreciate you again for being on. And just like I tell everybody, I'd like to have you on again sometime.
I appreciate the opportunity for sure. And, any time that our schedules can align and we both have some time, wouldn't mind making a return trip and talking more about how we can navigate and wrestle with ADHD.
I love it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Wrestling with ADHD and Bruce and my special guest, Terrence.